Well, if you're a Facebook user, you may want to update that password. That's because the personal data of over 500 million users has been compromised. Hackers have accessed information including full names, contact details, users' locations, as well as email addresses. But Facebook says there's nothing to worry about, or is there? Well, Tech Hub host Aki Anastasio is going to make some sense out of all of this for us. Aki, good morning. Should we worry? Should we listen to Facebook and believe that there's nothing to worry about?
No, you should never listen to Facebook when they talk to you about your privacy, and you should be worried about it. And this has serious implications. Now, Facebook have said that, they knew about this in 2019, that this leak and this compromise happened, and they blocked all the, the different ports, etc., that really allowed for this leak to happen. But the problem is that these hackers had that information out there. They were trying to sell it. Now that information is available for free. Now, why you should worry, it's not so much as the email addresses it's turning out to be that's an issue. I mean, it's a very small amount of the email addresses that are actually out there, but it's the telephone numbers that's the most important thing. Now, if you have used and put your telephone number in your Facebook account, that's where it becomes tricky, because these hackers have now got your cell phone number that you use to register and to verify yourself. And where it becomes dangerous is for things like phishing and social engineering and people doing scamming things. And really, they can even go as far as going to a network and doing a SIM swap. Now, if you've got your cell phone number linked to your bank account, for example, and these hackers have managed to swap out your SIM with your number, that's where it becomes really dangerous. And that's the big concern out there. And in fact, Yuveka, some people that have been hacked in this hack have already seen an increased number of spam calls coming into their numbers, unusual SMSs. So these hackers are certainly using that information for, nefarious purposes like spamming right now and sending out marketing material, but it could get a lot worse.
So, Aki, how do I protect myself right now? Once I get off air with you, what do I actually need to do when I log onto Facebook? What do I need to change?
Well, the first thing you need to do is, if you go to this website, it's called Have I Been Pawned, with PAWNED, and you can type in your email address there, and you can find out where your vulnerabilities have happened online, right? It's not only Facebook. They look globally at what other accounts you might have on social media, or e-commerce accounts, and they will find out, and they basically look at all the companies that have been hacked in the past, and they see if you're a vulnerability. Now, many people tend to use the same password that they would use on Facebook with all their other accounts as well. So the first thing you do is change your password. But I'm afraid that your phone number is already out there if you are part of this hack. So the first thing you should do is enter that two-factor authentication. With all the different websites you use an app like 1Password, where you really have a really strong password with very strong encryption that the hackers can't get into. So yes, change your password, and also I would also just double check where else you've been hacked, and then start closing up all those loopholes that might be impacting you. But it's a tough one, because many people have been on Facebook for a long time. That's the first number that they used when they registered, and that number people keep for a long, long time. And that's where the problem is at the moment. So my advice to people, and this is what I've done, I've got a second number that I use for all the other stuff online that is not my personal number when I register for these kind of websites.
So changing your password is obviously the first step, or the first defense. What about, like you say, the phone numbers? I would imagine that you'd say don't even put your phone number on Facebook. What are the details we should and shouldn't put on there in our about info?
That's always a very tricky issue, because most of us don't know who's following us. I mean, we've got people that we add, friends that we've never met before. So I tend to not share any personal information about where my location is, what I'm doing, etc. So I'm very generic and very vague on Facebook. And in fact, I'm in the process of really downscaling Facebook and taking all my data off, and really distancing myself completely from this platform, because this has happened far far too many times. But don't share personal information, because when we talk about social engineering, these guys can really duplicate eNCA if they've got your number, for example, if they know where you've been, if they've got a few of your personal details, they can convince somebody else that they are eNCA. And that's where it gets dangerous. And fortunately, in this country, the banks and the cell phone networks, if you go into a cell phone store to try and do a SIM swap, they require some really serious information like your ID. You've got to have the proper documentation. But I'm afraid that, whenever there are human beings involved in a process like this, people can be manipulated, and people can be, you can divert past those particular barriers that the banks and the cell phone companies put up, because we often hear of SIM cards being swapped out, and that's where it gets dangerous, because the moment you're trying to authenticate yourself with a bank, that SMS is now going to the wrong person's hands. So, you've got to do all the checks online, and I would take my number off. Don't share personal information, change your password immediately, and don't share your entire life on Facebook.
Well, Aki, I suppose the question is, should we even bother being on Facebook? I mean, you mentioned somebody trying to create another profile for me. It's happened on Instagram as well. Somebody's trying with my pictures and all of that twice. So is it even worth being on social media these days?
Well, look, we're living in a society where we have these kind of issues happening on a daily basis. Some people get great satisfaction on social media. There's no doubt about the fact that Facebook has helped connect millions of people around the world when you look at classmates and that sort of thing. But unfortunately, we have situations like we've had this data leak that we're talking about today. And I'm afraid that today, in the world that we're living in today, wherever you are, we can say Facebook. Should we be on Facebook? But should you be on e-commerce, for example? Because e-commerce websites are also getting hacked. So your personal information is sitting out there. You are trusting other people with your personal information. So it's not just Facebook in the world that we're living in today. Any kind of digital interaction that you have online, whether it's a website, whether you're on LinkedIn, which is your own personal business profile, whether it's e-commerce, everything can be hacked today and has been hacked in many regards in the past. So I guess it's a difficult one, eNCA. There's no escaping the fact that you're part of the digital system and you are the product. And I guess the danger is, if you really want to be safe, you don't have any internet connection. You revert to the old-style Nokia phone that you had, the 2100, that has no data connectivity. You have no online presence. That's the best way to stay safe online in 2021, I'm afraid. I
think it's time to go old school for most of us. Again, of course, I suppose the other advice would be to keep changing your passwords. And I can barely remember mine. It would be a nightmare. But thanks so much, Aki Anastasio. Do those checks and balances. Change that password immediately if you are on Facebook. And, of course, all the unnecessary information that doesn't actually need to be there. Well, the Congress